All right. Oh, let's listen. All right, good luck, boys.
Democracy is great. I mean, it would be if only people were smart. But the problem
I just like to get these out of the way. True! I rate this one a true out of 10, actually.
is that people are just so stupid.
This is a bit reductionist. I'm going to be super pedantic during this, okay? Because I don't like this guy. So my problem with people and voting on democratic things is that the problems right now are too complicated for like a simple layman to really have a full grasp on. So things like climate change or things like what is the budget? Like I don't think that these are issues that like normal people have like can have like a well-informed strong opinion on. I just don't think that we're like it's a lot. It's a lot for like a layman to keep up with, I think. But
If you try to tell people the facts, they just fart right in your face. They use non-specific words like stuff and things, and they wear pajamas to Walmart. Morons.
wait, is it logos versus pathos? Why are you writing so much? It's going to take forever. Ah, that's true. Maybe we should just play oxygen not included. Wait, if you don't like it, go watch here. Look, here's the video. Go watch it on your own time. Okay, there you go. Or I could just watch. Like, oh, that's stupid. Oh, I didn't agree with that. Oh, that's dumb. Oh, that's dumb. Oh, that's dumb. Is that what you want me to do? Fuck off, dude. Go watch it on your own fucking time, okay? Fuck off.
Pajamas to Walmart. Morons. Allow me to elucidate the perfunctory manner in which the quintessential everyday people perform their general malaise.
People are
Big
dumb.
words! The average person gets up every single day and goes to their bad job that they picked because of some you problem. And maybe they're biologically stupid, maybe they're just too lazy to be smart. Big words! The average person gets up
Howdy
every
partner
single
feels
day and goes to
weirdly.
their bad job that they picked because of some you problem. And maybe they're biologically stupid, maybe they're just too lazy to
The goal is to get Peter on and talk to him after this video. So that's why I'm writing stuff down.
be smart, whatever, I don't know, they do it. They choose to be lazy, and the only kind of person who would
Good
do
to
that
see
is a
you
stupid
streaming
one.
again.
And you know what? If it's not Maybelline, they're born with it. Then these biologically stupid and lazy people meet these other biologically stupid and lazy people, and they breed. Yeah. Ew! Breed!
Okay, so for people saying keep in mind that he's only using your likeness, he's not talking about your position specifically. I reject that, and you should consider going to the hospital and getting a fucking brain analysis if you, honest to God, think that like this isn't like pointing pretty specifically at me. Like he literally bit my fucking background, and we're using Twitch bits and everything. Like he's highly insinuating that my arguments, if are not these exactly, that they are highly resembling my arguments. Okay, so like don't fuck out of here. Okay.
Moving on, I think democracy is stupid. Because everyone who isn't me is stupid. I'm smart. Let's bring in the lefty to debate!
Hey, what's up?
Moralist!
Democracy is where the citizens of a society make decisions about that society by voting. It comes in a few different flavors, like direct democracy is when citizens vote directly on each issue, and representative democracy is when they elect representatives to vote on their behalf. Pretty self-explanatory, right? I mean, there's a lot of nuance and lots of different ideas about it, but for the most part, we know what it's supposed to be. The ability of the people to make decisions for themselves. That in mind, did you know that over 70% of Americans believe in climate change? That's a lot, isn't it? 63% of Americans believe that climate change is due to humans, too. Only a 7% drop-off. Only 14% of people in the United States specifically believe that climate change is not happening. To put that in perspective, Americans that believe in climate change outnumber those who do not 5 to 1. Or at least they did in the Yale study that came out earlier in the year. While I was editing this, more polls came out, and apparently it's more!
Yeah, so, I mean, who cares? This is about democracy, not climate change.
Apparently it's more!
I'm just reading the stats. So we'll ignore like some of the more like complicated parts. Jesus. But I mean, I don't think these polls help him very much. Like, only 56% of humans believe we should act on climate change right now. Almost half of people, 48%, believe that humans can slow but not stop climate change at all. But, okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, who cares? This is about democracy, not climate change. I mean, I was talking about how much better I am than everyone because
Is this just about Americans? I think it's just about, that poll is about Americans. Isn't that literally your apartment in the background? Yeah.
This, more polls came out, and apparently it's more.
Yeah, so, I mean, who cares? This is about democracy, not climate change. I mean, I was talking about how much better I am than everyone because I know
How is this on par with calling you a pedophile or pointing you to the FBI? When did I ever say it was on par with that?
right, and that if left up to other people, nothing would be good. I don't want to hear about other people are also right and how. That's incongruent.
No, it might just end up a little bit more related than you might think. Meander with me.
Oh, so you mean you're gonna gish gallop?
Keeping in mind the assertion that 70% of Americans believe in climate change, imagine that a politician won an election with 70% of the vote. Or, hell, 63% of the vote. In even the most cautious media narrative, that situation would have to be called a landslide for any characterization to seem credible. What I'm saying is, if
Destiny. Ah, yes, back to the Destiny hit piece era. I remember these from my alt-right days. Weren't your alt-right days filled with the alt-right calling you a pedophile and reporting you to the FBI, or am I just mistaken? So firstly, the left calls me a pedophile about as much as the alt-right does now. The alt-right hasn't, or the left haven't called the FBI me like the alt-right does, but I wasn't even telling any of that. I'm just saying like, oh, cool, it's time for Destiny fucking hit pieces where we all like take dumb fucking videos of mine and then make dumb fucking videos about it without addressing anything I've actually said. That's like from that era. I can draw comparisons between two groups of people without those people being entirely identical. And the way that the extreme left dipshits on the internet function rhetorically is very similar to how people on the alt-right function. But this is probably true of literally every extremist group everywhere. Like, I'm not to say that like the left is the same as the right or whatever, but that like the type of intellectual dishonesty and then the rhetoric displayed is more or less the same as what I would expect to see on any like extremist dipshit part of the internet.
there was a Democratic vote among the American public right now, it would be a landslide, and we would probably be working in a more unified manner to combat climate change.
This is the worst argument ever.
That's all well and good, but that's now in 2019. It wasn't always like that. Studying climate change actually goes way back. The greenhouse effect was an idea that first came about in the 1800s, but it's specifically the 1970s and onward I want to focus on. In 1977, Exxon scientist James Black reported to the company's executives with an internal report asserting that fossil fuel usage was changing the climate. This same year, the EPA released a technical report that reached a similar conclusion. Exxon began investigating climate change pretty heavily, and in 1982, they distributed an internal primer on climate change, which sounds positive until you find out that Marvin B. Glazer, the environmental affairs manager at Exxon, directed that it should be restricted to Exxon personnel and not distributed externally. Until about 1989, the Exxon scientists were not outright ignored. Even so, their information was never disseminated at mass scale. Some of their information was disseminated in scientific journals, but the audience for that is extremely narrow and specific, much like EPA reports. In 1988, NASA scientist James Hansen spoke to the US Senate about climate change. This was broadcast to the public and was presented in a manner that required less prior knowledge to understand.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I just ignored all that. Okay, hold on. You have my undivided attention now. Let me listen again.
You mean you're gonna get Gallop?
Keeping in mind the assertion that 70% of Americans believe in climate change, imagine that a politician won an election with 70% of the vote, or hell, 63% of the vote. In even the most cautious media narrative, that situation would have to be called a landslide for any characterization to seem credible. What I'm saying is, if there was a Democratic vote among the American public right now, it would be a landslide, and we would probably be working in a more unified manner to combat climate change. That's all well and good, but that's now in 2019. It wasn't always like that. Studying climate change actually goes way back. The greenhouse effect was an idea that first came about in the 1800s, but it's specifically the 1970s and onward I want to focus on. In 1977, Exxon scientist James Black reported to the company's executives with an internal report asserting that fossil fuel usage was changing the climate. This same year, the EPA released a technical report that reached a similar conclusion. Exxon began investigating climate change pretty heavily, and in 1982, they distributed an internal primer on climate change, which sounds positive until you find out that Marvin B. Glazer, the environmental affairs manager at Exxon, directed that it should be restricted to Exxon personnel and not distributed externally. Until about 1989, the Exxon scientists were not outright ignored. Even so, their information was never disseminated at mass scale. Some of their information was disseminated in scientific journals, but the audience for that is extremely narrow and specific, much like EPA reports. In 1988, NASA scientist James Hansen spoke to the US Senate about climate change. This was broadcast to the public and was presented in a manner that required less prior knowledge to understand.
Global warming has reached a level such that we can ascribe with a high level of confidence a cause and effect relationship between greenhouse effect and observed warming. It is already already happening now. The greenhouse effect has been detected and it is changing our climates now. We already reached a point where the greenhouse effect is important.
This testimony was many people's introduction to climate science. And only months later, an Exxon tanker spilled 11 million gallons of oil into Alaskan waters. The public, or at least the public that reads scientific journals and watches Senate hearings, was becoming alarmed. In response, Exxon, along with Shell and BP, founded the Global Climate Coalition, which, again, sounds positive, at least until you find out what it was. The Global Climate Coalition was a lobbyist front for oil companies that specifically oppose any action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. To accomplish their goals, the GCC disseminated an abundance of information designed to undermine public perception of the science behind global warming. But regardless of why, our society isn't currently treating climate change as an all-hands-on-deck global crisis. I believe there's two reasons for that. First, the information and attention economies around the subject have been strategically manipulated to prevent people's familiarity with evidence. And second, even if...
Okay, before we get too much farther into this, because I can already see like one of the huge fatal flaws that he's presenting here. The problem is that climate change is not a binary issue. Fuck, hold on, I'm getting ultra fucking triggered over here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, climate change is not a binary issue. Hold on. I'm working on a second Word document, actually. Okay. Aren't you always saying that people aren't worried enough? Okay, stop. Okay, listen, okay? Let me help you with this, okay? These problems don't require binary solutions, okay? If I'm standing on you and I have my neck on your throat, okay? Well, now we have a problem. We can't breathe. What do? We either continue to choke you. Did I say my neck on your throat? My boot on your throat or whatever. I don't know what neck on throat means. Or we either have, you continue to choke the person or you stop, right? It's a pretty easy thing to figure out. Or let's say that I'm about to run a red light, right? We've got the gas down. We're going to run a red light. We're going to avoid running the light. We either take our foot off the gas and we stop, or we continue to hold our foot on the gas and we run the red light, right? These are very interesting things with binary solutions. You have you either do something or you don't do something. The number of options are incredibly limited. With climate change, there's a ton. There's a ton of stuff. There's a ton of stuff going on. I could say, hey guys, do we need to do something about climate change? And everybody's like, yeah, hell yeah, 100%. And you go, okay, cool. Well, number one, we all got to stop driving cars. Oh, well, hold on. The support for that policy would be very fucking low. Or, hey, we got to stop flying planes. Or, hey, we need to put a $5 gas tax. I'm getting so triggered right now. I'm sorry. The analog to this problem is Brexit, okay? When the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union, they voted on a 52-48 margin to leave. But now that we're actually deciding how should we leave, we see that the issue is actually far more complicated. Climate change is the same way. Just because 60% of Americans believe it's a problem doesn't mean that we can democratically fix it, because it could be that the solutions to these problems are actually far less popular than simply identifying the problem in and of itself. I have a feeling we're about to waste 5 minutes in this video talking about how Americans, they understand climate change is a problem. Oh, blah, 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 right? That might be possible, but that doesn't mean shit. What we need to find out is how far are people willing to go to actually rectify the problem? How far are people actually willing to go? How much are people willing to sacrifice? How much are people willing to change their lives to deal with climate change? That's the real question. Kind of like with Brexit. Okay, well, you want to leave the European Union? On what terms? What does your relationship with the European Union look like in a post-Brexit world? Well, now this question becomes incredibly difficult to answer, right? That's why this is a really stupid, a very naive and immature analysis of a very complicated, non-binary problem. But it's presented like a binary in our parties. If it's presented like a binary in our parties, well, the Republicans run everything right now. So then Americans are anti-climate change, or maybe there's multiple issues to take into account. But okay.
If people were familiar with the evidence, there is no mechanism to force meaningful change in ending the vast majority of carbon emissions. It was around the mid-2000s that these oil companies started advertising their alternative energy divisions, and it has been since then that public opinion has changed the most. So is society underreacting to the climate crisis because people are stupid? Is it really just about knowing? I don't think so. In fact, I think it's because the information and attention economies are effectively owned. Just as every
I don't understand why people say People aren't stupid. The problem is just that it's not that people lack the information. It's just that the information isn't out there because everybody's hiding it. Okay, well then it sounds like they are pretty dumb then about the problem. Now maybe it's not their fault. Maybe it's the fault. But I mean, you're basically restating my problem. But okay.
company, factory, refinery, and machine that are putting carbon into the air are also owned. The everyday person has been kept away from that information and to this day has no real control, democratic or otherwise, over what is done with the means of production.
Well, people are stupid for letting them own the means of production.
Would you agree that a socioeconomic system where the means of production are owned by the workers in an attempt to socialize both the labor and product could very well be an improvement then?
No, that is not what I mean. I think they should not buy anything from those companies, causing them to go bankrupt and disappear forever.
So you think that the everyday person...
This is a good straw man position. What would you say for highly diversified companies? This just isn't possible for the average consumer. If you really wanted to boycott Nestle, I don't think I would. I don't even know if I believe if like Nestle or like if boycotting is that effective a way to do things, because like I don't know how much the average person can get on board with boycotting some of these like giant multinational companies. Like the average person isn't about to boycott gasoline if you've got to drive to work. You can't boycott Nestle. These people own like 50 million fucking companies. Like
usage of, say, gasoline is statistically comparable to industrial usage, but you think everyone can just up and stop buying it. They'd get usage of, say, gasoline is statistically comparable to industrial usage, but you think everyone can just up and stop buying it. They'd get...
Of course not. What an easy, stupid fucking straw man to argue against. Congratulations, dude. You're so fucking smart. The average consumer absolutely can't boycott these products because they don't have the means to do so. God, what a brilliant fucking argument. I wish I could have thought of that 2 minutes before listening to you say it in a video against a dumb fuck straw man.
Fired from their job for not showing up.
Good.
Noise.
There's too many idiots anyways. It might clear them out.
So you'd rather have the majority of people starving to death because they can't work to earn money, which is necessary to eat in this system, instead of consider a different organization method for power and mode of production?
Well, like, the problem is we could fail if we tried something like that.
I'm getting a lot of bits for this.
Anyways, it might clear them out.
So you'd rather have the majority of people starving to death.
My favorite thing is just like, can we just take one moment to appreciate, in his debate against me, he backpedaled every fucking claim, conceded every fucking point, and had zero shit to say to me. But in this video, so Destiny, you think your arguments have merit? You wouldn't rather move to a system where we've socialized both the labor and the means of production? So you're telling me you'd rather let everybody die in the streets? What an idiotic position. I'm going to eviscerate all of your claims now in a cool and calm, collected manner, while you sit there and scream and screech on the sidelines like an irritating little goblin, collecting your stupid bits. I'm going to crush you, kid. Like, this is his unironic video. Like, are you fucking serious? Is this real fucking life right now? Please stop. I can't do this. Oh, shit. Okay, let me...
Death because they can't work to earn money, which is necessary to
So
eat
you're
in this
telling
system,
me that
instead
you'd
of
rather have
consider a
everyone
different
die in the
organization
streets. I
method
am
for
gonna
power
crush you.
and mode of production?
Well, like, the problem is we could fail if we tried something like that.
Dank.
Are bits money? Because you get a lot of them.
I mean, improving society sounds really great and all, but it isn't how my audience lives right now. So, the status quo has to feel comfortable enough to give me money. Meaning, I flat out can't take you, your criticisms of current conditions, or your ideas about a future society seriously, or they'll stop paying me. Do you want me to starve?
No, but that is exactly the problem. You're financially incentivized to support the world as it is today, coerced in that if you don't, you'll not be able to support yourself anymore. Do you see how that's a kind of ownership the current order of things has over the information and attention economies?
I know. It really does sound like an example of what you're trying to say prevents systemic change and improvement. But, like, who cares?
Wowie.
Please stop.
Minecraft! Yeah! Oh, yeah! Uh-huh.
let's say there's a 100-worker cooperatively owned factory where 70, that's 70%, the same percentage of people in the United States who understand that climate change is real, 70 of this factory's workers are white. The remaining 30 workers are black.
Oh my god, he's gonna try to tango with the hypothetical now. Oh shit. Can we start over? Hold on. Okay.
Moment, let's assume the white majority is also racist in this hypothetical, and it continually votes against the black minority's interests. I bring this up because recently this hypothetical situation has been used to discredit even a preliminary change in the relations of production, namely the co-op. So, why are these workers racist?
Because they're stupid and white. And that is why people are racist. It's because they're white and stupid and...
Oh yeah, this is like why does every fucking lefty do this? I hope he can come on again. After we're done reviewing his video, we'll reach out to him on fucking Twitter and we'll see what he says, okay? Okay.
And white. Slavery was awful. God damn, this meme is golden, isn't it?
It was people.
Oh, he's about to say, by the way, that slavery comes from capitalism. Spoiler alert. Sorry, I just spoiled the next part of the video. But he's about to say that, like, oh, well, the reason why people are racist is because of class and class warfare and shit. That's what's happening next, by the way.
In institutions with centralized power, which actively withheld and propagandized climate information in previous decades. Race has been propagandized in mostly the same ways, albeit much more heavily and for centuries rather than decades. So, to repeat the question, when we're talking about a co-op in a hypothetical socialist world where no one has any kind of capital to unilaterally control the information flow, why are these workers racist? So
There's different types of capital beyond just financial capital. And if you're going to sit here and tell me about some ideal society where nobody has financial capital, of course other types of capital is going to exist as well. For instance, social capital. In no socialist utopia are two people always going to be taken the same at any given point in time. An older person might be taken more seriously than the younger person. The manager of a co-op might be taken more seriously than just one of the lower workers. There's a million different types of capital.
Buddy.
Don't pretend that like nobody can have any capital to spread misinformation or whatever. That's absolutely not true.
where
I love you, buddy.
no one has any kind of capital to unilaterally control the information flow, why are these workers racist? So let's assume that Exxon was a democratically organized co-op. No obscenely powerful individuals able to simply decide that their interests take priority over everyone else's lives. In the situation where power is democratically distributed in the factory, Exxon most likely could not have unilaterally decided to withhold or manipulate. Democratically distributed in the factory, Exxon most likely could not have unilaterally decided to withhold or manipulate information on climate change. Why? Because the decision isn't just left to one rich fuck or a few rich fucks with ownership of the means of production and a profit motive thanks to commodity production. If I worked at Exxon and saw a report that provided evidence that Exxon's activity was contributing to killing the planet, I'd want that to be made public ASAP. While I do understand not everyone is like me and it is theoretically possible people would vote against releasing the report, but the point is that Marvin B. Glazier, the environmental affairs manager at Exxon at the time, could never have unilaterally directed that the report should be restricted to Exxon
Why
personnel.
do we not have a straw man or scaro-nicorn emote for Halloween? Here's some financial capital.
Thanks.
And not distributed externally.
But you just acknowledged the biggest problem. People could vote so that no one outside sees it. Checkmate, leftist! You moron! You idiot!
Sure, but the point is that structurally speaking, no one person or small group of people would have the say on whether or not the report is made public, because no one person or small group of people has direct control over the information economy surrounding it. And if someone did have that authority, it would be revocable, and they would have had to have been voted into that position.
Yeah, well, I don't want to talk about this factory's origin story. I just want to make up a factory that makes me right.
One of the reasons why I brought up the 30 black worker, 70 white worker hypothetical is because I was curious, if you had a power structure that was completely democratic, how would you resolve disputes between your workers? 30 black, 70 whites are racist. What do the black people do? Notice how the analogy that he drew on in order to show that a democratic workplace works, notice how the problem that he drew on was one that unites the workers, right? Like climate change or destruction of the environment, instead of a problem that divides the workers. So his analogy doesn't even fit. It's completely disanalogous because it analyzes a separate problem. If you want to tell me that a democratically affected workplace might be able to more adequately address problems that negatively impact all the workers, yeah, that's probably true. I would admit that, of course. That maybe giving every single worker a say might improve conditions for all of the workers more so than just having like management making decisions. Yeah, sure, that's probably true. That's not very controversial. I think most people would agree with that. But the problem that I brought up was, what if you have a divided workplace with no management structure? You have a divided workplace that's voting for policies that disproportionately impact some workers over the other. How do you resolve those problems? In capitalism, you have a capital owner that unilaterally makes those decisions. In a co-op system, everything is socially owned, and if most of the people there are racist, it seems like those groups of people would be fucked. So my problem is one in which the workers are divided, but his analogy to this, his hypothetical to address my hypothetical, has a problem where the workers can have a united front. It's a bad analogy. It actually completely fails to address mine at all. I wonder if we'll go back to it. Spoiler alert, probably not.
If Exxon was a co-op with democratic accountability, withholding a report like that would be an obvious misuse of a position's power, assuming a position like environmental affairs.
Sorry, hold on. I'm so sorry. Okay.
Man.
I just want to make up a factory that makes me right.
If Exxon was a co-op with democratic accountability, withholding a report like that would be an obvious misuse of a position's power, assuming a position like environmental affairs manager even existed in the first place. The situation isn't stationary, it develops as people think critically. The context of such a situation is that Exxon, and most likely everything else, would have to be set up entirely different from how it is now. So if the pretend factory were set up democratically, if the voters voted on a charter and agreed upon standards intended not to centralize power among anyone specifically, I think it's fairly unreasonable to assume the entire 70% majority of white workers are racist because they voted to enter into that agreement with 30 black people. Whether or not it's implemented perfectly as power among anyone specifically, I think it's fairly unreasonable to assume the entire 70% majority of white workers are racist because they voted to enter into that agreement with 30 black people.
Okay, well now you're just kicking the can down the road. Now you're saying, well, in my society, nobody, well, okay, so tell me, how can your co-op not be racist? My co-op can't be racist. Really? What if you have racist people in it? Nope. Because in order to come into my co-op, you're not allowed to be racist. Oh. Like, okay, what if you've got a bunch of white people that want to form a co-op then and not allow black people in it? Now what do you do? Right? I mean, you're moving the problem back one. You haven't given me a way that your problem addresses racism. You're just saying like, oh, well, in my co-op, there are no racists because they would never enter a co-op with black people. Well, okay. Well, what do you do about places that don't want to do anything with black people? Like, for instance, what if you have like a cake shop in Colorado that says, we don't want to sell cakes to gay people? Or what if you have banks that say, I don't want to loan money to black people? Or what if you have businesses that say, I don't want to hire people that are transgender or of a certain ethnic group? Like, now you've just kicked the can down one road recursively, right? Like,
or not it's implemented perfectly, the ideal of democracy these people subscribe to would imply they don't want to racially marginalize the 30% black minority of workers as they are entering into a democratic arrangement where black votes count as much as white ones, which is not even the case with the US presidential election. But let's generously say that 55% of the 70 white workers in this factory are prone to make consciously racist decisions. That's more than half. About 39 racist workers to be exact. So when the racist votes come up, the 30 black people combined with the 31 white people who are not racist will win with 6.
Okay, I like how people dude, how many fucking black slaves did we have? What is this math? Like, okay, well, let's assume that some whites are racist, I guess, okay? There's still gonna be way more non-racist whites that are gonna rise up for the black. Then why did we have fucking slavery in this country for fucking how many years? When was, like, over 100 and some whatever? How long slavery existed in United States? 90 years? 89 years? Why did we have slavery here for so long? And then after, wait, 200 years? Wait, It lasted in about half of the states until 1865. Then it was prohibited nationally by the 13th Amendment. 200 plus years. Why did we have slavery here for so fucking long? If like non-racist whites would just like join the black people and rise up and stop it, or past that, even civil rights up until 1964 or whatever, right? Like, why would we have any of this racist shit at all? Like, all the non-racist whites should just join with the black people. None of these problems should ever exist. Like, 89 in the U.S., but it existed in the colonies prior. Sure.
61% of the vote, a pretty...
Capital owners had far more incentive to keep racism alive in the country, except that's not even necessarily true. Like today, like racism and all that shit sells way worse than more friendly PC messages, which is why people like fucking Peter are even posting on fucking YouTube, right? All these other social network platforms are like aggressively curtailing this type of content. Like that's not even true. Like the North industrialized like a motherfucker, and they didn't necessarily rely on slavery to do it. Like in some cases, people say that's why the North had a better chance winning the war, and why the North pushed for non-slavery so much is because their industrialization and their capital like carried them into a world where they didn't even need slavery. So I don't even know if that point is necessarily true, that, oh, well, capitalism is what kept them as slaves. I don't know if that's true. I've only seen one paper, and it might be a contested topic, but there was a paper that slavery even held the South back economically. If anybody has a link to this, or if I have it on my Google Keep, you can go look at it. But like, Destiny, that was a joke. Okay.
comfortable margin. A question I think should be asked is, why would 70 racist white workers say, I really don't like the blacks, but I would really like to start a factory where everyone gets equal say in the situation, including the blacks who I consciously consider to be subhuman? That is to say, what set of conditions would lead to the creation of this factory? I feel like this hypothetical situation would require circumstances that are extremely unlikely. You could make the case that subconscious bias would manifest in vote results. Sure, that's true. They definitely could. But we've also already made the point that this happens in the status quo, where the way power is arranged specifically incentivizes it now. It's already a problem, so why shouldn't we try to do it a different way? I'm sorry, but the idea a worker-owned co-op, an enterprise where it has been democratically agreed upon that black workers individually have exactly the same ownership and power as white workers who supposedly hate them, is probably not something that would happen in the first place. This hypothetical doesn't really make sense. Racism, assuming it is rampant enough that every single white person is consciously racist to the point where they will explicitly vote to harm black people, would have to be dealt with during the founding of this factory for it to progress to the point the hypothetical assumes. That is to say, it's extremely unlikely anyone could actually negate the contradictions of this premise because it seems like no realistic sequence of events could actually lead to it.
So you don't have an answer. I win.
So, like, somebody in chat brought this up. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but, like, I'm pretty sure it literally says in the fucking Constitution, like, all men are created equal, right? We said that, but we still had fucking slaves, okay? You could just as easily do this with a fucking co-op, okay? All white men are created equal? Nope, it does not say that. It does not say that. That is not the verbiage of the Constitution. Or the Declaration of Independence, or whichever fucking bullshit-ass document it was. It's literally a Republican meme.
Because I made a problem that isn't gonna happen and you couldn't solve it! Ah! Besides, one word can untie your little democracy knot.
Utopia?
One word no one likes, no one wants, and yet enough people were stupid enough to vote for. The word is a portmanteau of Britain and exit. It's exit now. Brexit.
He's going to the Brexit meme. Okay, how is he going to address this? Let's see. How can we blame capitalism on Brexit? There's two roads we can go. One road is that neoliberal policies disenfranchised enough people that they were desperate enough to leave the European Union, so it's actually capitalism's fault. Another road could be that blatant advertising from capitalists brought it about, but that doesn't make sense because capitalists didn't do it. It has to be the former, that neoliberal policies disenfranchised enough people. That has to be it, right? There are like extreme lefty positions that oppose being a part of the European Union. Let's see which route he takes.
Democracy arguments seem to inevitably mention the supposed ultimate failure of democracy, Brexit. The thing where everyday people had control and it fucked everyone over. Apparently.
Checkmate, tard.
Whoa, hey! That's an ableist slur. I mean, you're an oppositional character saying the opposite of what I think, but why would you say that?
Because as a character, I represent the kind of person who would say that. I mean, you, Peter Coffin, wrote everything I'm saying, and you're playing me as a character. You're using aesthetic imitation to highlight the difference between what this character represents and what the overall video represents. One of the people who inspired this cold, smug asshole regularly uses neuroatypicality as an insult, and this acknowledges it while also functioning as a juxtaposition to emphasize the kind of person this video is arguing against.
Now, I'm gonna have to concede to that, because you're right, context does specifically create the point of a punchline. I mean, I totally forgot a lot of statements in satirical fiction like these segments aren't really made to be taken at face value.
So, Brexit was a failure of democracy. Tard.
To qualify, I won't be engaging in a general value judgment of the European Union here, deciding if the EU is good or
Probably because he's got a big lefty fan base that fucking hates the EU as well, so he doesn't want to defend it. Grift much? Got him.
bad requires significantly
That
more
also
context than I
assumed
can
that
give.
the demographics of a coup will never change what if it starts. All white doesn't include racial equality and then gets black people
In a section of a video that isn't about the EU. The position I'm working from is that the EU embodies a lot of the problems of neoliberalism, but there are also some things which might make it a preferable situation to Brexit. Not only is there a real possibility of shortages of basic necessities like food, gasoline, and medicine, but there are also a number of EU-supported laws regulating labor, social rights, business, and finance, which would just no longer affect Britain anymore. Leaving would also ensure further privatization in the economy, welfare, and probably most scary for those on the margins, public services.
I think we're going to have to think about healthcare very, very differently. And I think we're going to have to move to an insurance-based system of healthcare. Frankly, I would feel more comfortable that my money would return value if I was able to do that through the marketplace of an insurance company than just us trustingly giving 100 million a year to central government.
Part of the reason for that would be that the EU would require Britain to
Type or
negotiate a
block.
new
Very
trade
low.
deal with the United States, and if you know anything about us, you know that a whopping 17% of our gross domestic product is private healthcare spending, over $3.5 trillion a year. We don't have a public healthcare system, we have a private one, and that's why it costs so much. The people and institutions that own that industry have the kind of money that can lobby pretty well, and the dipshit running this place is on their side. Do you think that with a Brexit, NHS would survive in its nationalized form? Well, I'm skeptical.
Look, I think everything with a trade deal is on the table. When you're dealing on trade, everything's on the table. So NHS or anything else, or a lot more than that, but everything will be on the table, absolutely.
Can you imagine all those stupid idiots losing that just because they voted to screw themselves over?
I mean, that's not what they were voting for, though. As a broad message, they were told
Oh no, hold on. Are we about to say the climate change vote is an easy binary yes or no, but Brexit was actually a far more intricate issue, and people were voting as a, what did I say earlier? Who's going to say it's a rejection of neoliberal policies? Is that what we're going to? Oh boy.
Britain was going to get to decide its own destiny, and more specifically, they were told things like the NHS was going to get access to £350 million Britain would otherwise send to the EU every week, when in reality, a highly regarded indispensable public service like the NHS would become more vulnerable than ever before.
Hi, Wolf Dad.
Oh boy, I just woke up from a coma. Time to watch my favorite Nebraskan leftist streamer Angel Thump.
The polling data that I saw, somebody in chat just mentioned this. Maybe you guys can find it. I might need the source for this. The polling data that I saw was that the number one reason why people voted for Brexit was because of immigration. I don't want to say racism, but immigration was like the leading cause of why people were so like hype on Brexit.
Fuck off, Tanky!
I think it's reasonable to assert at least part of the point of Brexit is to undermine a number of public institutions to force one or more national crises that can be exploited to undemocratically push through controversial policies while people are too occupied by disasters to mount any kind of effective resistance. This concept is the basis of Naomi Klein's The Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism.
10 years ago, I published The Shock Doctrine, an investigation that spanned 4 decades from Pinochet's US-backed coup in 1970s Chile to Hurricane Katrina in 2005. I noticed a brutal and recurring tactic by right-wing governments. After a shocking event, a war, a coup, a terrorist attack, market crash, or natural disaster, exploit the public's disorientation, suspend democracy, push through radical policies that enrich the 1% at the expense of the poor and middle class.
Given that there were a number of wealthy business people involved in the promotion of Brexit, everyone from Sir James Ratcliffe, the richest man in Britain as of this writing, and Big Papa Suck, James Dyson himself, the vacuum man, it's reasonable to assume there's financial incentive to back Brexit. Where's Sir James Ratcliffe?
Is there, though? Isn't Brexit opposed by almost like every fucking business, corporation, financial institution that exists in London? Like, aren't all the horrible neoliberal economists like writing article after article about how fucking horrible the fucking Brexit and everything? When the Brexit shit was first done, the vote was done. The FTSE 100 and 250 both like fucking plummeted. The value of the pound plummeted. I could be totally wrong. Are there actually all these business owners in London, in the United Kingdom, that were pro-Brexit? Did this happen? Because everything I read coming out of like the neoliberal shill section was that they were like pretty adamantly against this happening. Apparently, maybe some extremely rich people were in favor of it, but
owns a company called Ineos, a privately owned UK multinational chemicals company,
and volatile chemicals,
and has constantly moaned about EU taxes, while the vacuum man has complained for years that he has had to put a label about how energy efficient his Dyson cleaners are on the Dyson cleaners. Less specifically, whether or not you love the EU, the likely wave of privatization that renegotiation of trade deals would enable would effectively hand publicly owned and accountable services and institutions to the highest bidder, which would often mean US capitalists, ironic as though that would be, as Britain was the original empire. Now, the government fully owning and undemocratically operating these things isn't democracy either. It's obviously also an instance of centralization of power. However, if laid out plainly, most would probably agree it's less objectionable to centralize that power in the UK government, which again is at least partially accountable to everyone on the electoral roll, rather than centralizing it with an individual or small group of people with a profit motive who are mainly accountable to themselves. For now, not only do wealthy capitalists have significant power in the financial economy, but it is that economic power specifically which affords significant power in the information economy, which is, for some reason, operating as a marketplace. That reason is neoliberalism. On this channel, I've said about 1 million times that attention is currency in the marketplace of ideas. Following that, the marketing industry is, in a sense, a currency exchange where people put fiat money in and get attention money back. When we fill in
every like foundational fucking like neoclassical economics claim is always going to support some giant body that is highly integrated, like the European Union, something that pushes for ideas like liberalization of trade, free movement, shared currency, maybe. Like I don't understand how I would be shocked. And I would be shocked if you could go from a neoclassical economist to find a person who's like, oh yeah, I'm real big on like neoclassical economics. I think that like protectionism and closed borders and reduction in trade, tariffs, trade barriers, I think that's all really good. What the fuck? Neoliberal foreign policy is literally defined by these supranational organizations. Yeah, like
details here, we see how undemocratic Brexit actually is. Robert Mercer is an American billionaire who made his money with artificial intelligence-driven investments. Up until May 1st, 2018, he also co-owned Cambridge Analytica, a now-defunct subsidiary of now-defunct UK influence operations firm called Strategic Communication Laboratories. SCL had previously contracted for militaries operating in the developing world doing elections management.
And volatile chemicals.
Note that this didn't mean provided infrastructure for elections, but rather it meant engaging in psychological warfare to manipulate elections in countries that were likely under duress due to, I don't know, maybe a military occupying the country or something like that.
My name is Christopher Wiley. I'm a data scientist, and I helped set up Cambridge Analytica. It's incorrect to call Cambridge Analytica a purely sort of data science company or an algorithm company. It is a full-service propaganda machine. If you can control all of the streams of information around your opponents, you can influence how they perceive that battle space, and you can then influence how they're going to behave and react.
Mercer and Steve Bannon, head of Breitbart, a right-wing propaganda organization which has been shown to repeatedly print false information and use biased framework and is co-owned by Robert Mercer, both became heavily involved and or invested in the U.S. branch of SCL. With their involvement, the company, as well as subcontracted firms such as Aggregate IQ, employed
I care about any of this.
machine learning and data obtained through Facebook to target voters in the UK with highly individualized psychological operations similar to that of the elections management it had done as SCL in developing nations, albeit more technologically advanced. Their machines used an incomprehensibly large amount of personal data harvested from millions of people's Facebook profiles to find individualized emotional triggers.
We would know what kinds of messaging you would be susceptible to, including the framing of it, the topics, the contents, the tone, whether it's scary or not, that kind of thing. So what you'd be susceptible to and where you're going to consume that. Websites will be created, blogs will be created, whatever it is that we think this target profile will be receptive to. We will create content on the internet for them to find. And then they see that and they click it and they go down the rabbit hole. Instead of standing in the public square and saying what you think and then letting people come and listen to you and have that shared experience as to what your narrative is, you are whispering into the ear of each and every voter, and you may be whispering one thing to this voter and another thing to another voter.
This was achieved in multiple ways, but one that was particularly dicey was creating a personality quiz that just flat out asked people questions about their emotional triggers. Questions along those lines. The quiz was branded in an innocuous way, implying data wasn't being recorded for a firm engaging in elections management.
Imagine I go and ask you, I say, hey, could you fill out the survey for me? Just do it on this app. And you say, fine, right? I don't just capture what your responses are. I capture all of the information about you from Facebook, but also this app then crawls through your social network and captures all of that data also. And so that means I only need to engage 50,000, 70,000, 100,000 people to get a really big data set really quickly. And it scales really quickly. We were able to get upwards of 50 million plus Facebook records in the span of a couple months. 50 million? Yeah, over 50 million records.
The quiz went viral with over 6 million people handing over answers to questions specifically about their personality. Keeping in mind that projects like PragerU, for instance, spend tens of thousands of dollars a week on Facebook advertising, it's reasonable to assume the same thing happened with this quiz, given the money and purpose behind it. Using the psychological profiles they obtained in this and other ways, personalized propaganda was disseminated. And that includes everything from standalone Facebook posts to links to sites like Breitbart. Can you do that? Sure, you can post things on Facebook. You can lie too. Hell, you could even tell the truth in your posts. But do you have the money to directly target millions of people? Do you have decades of experience manipulating elections in developing nations and the data to individualize your psychological warfare? Have you considered it's not just about getting people to vote a certain way? It may be about discouraging the people who will vote against you from voting altogether. And
couldn't Cambridge Analytica just be a co-op? I don't even know what we're arguing against here anymore. This isn't about individual wealthy capital owners. This could literally just be a co-op that is Cambridge Analytica that gets deals from other companies that want to work with them. You guys have no idea, okay?
Lol.
The triggering that I've been fighting this whole time, okay? I am being prodded relentlessly. I'm trying so hard, okay? I'm gonna use the restroom real quick and get a Red Bull. I'm sorry, I'm almost 100%.
following that, the marketing industry is, in a sense, a currency exchange where people put fiat money in and get attention money back. When we fill in the details here, we see how undemocratic Brexit actually is. Robert Mercer is an American billionaire who You can't do any of that. You don't have the means to. Is that an actual democratic distribution of power? I don't think it's absurd to say, no, it's not. It is
an extraordinary scandal that this should be anywhere near democracy. It should be clear to voters where information is coming from. And if it's not transparent or open where it's coming from, it raises the questions of whether we are actually living in a democracy or not.
If just 9.9% of people who were registered to vote but didn't vote had voted Remain, then Remain would have won the Brexit referendum. To emphasize how few people that is, it's less than 2% of the British population.
If you want to fundamentally change society, you first have to break it. It's only when you break it.
It's less than 2% of the British population.
If you want to fundamentally change...
Hi, Destiny. How's it going?
Oh, shit. Hey, what's up? I'm not the one that's claiming that I have better words than you. You're the one that said that I hide behind...
You just came in here and you're like, here's some ground rules. You must...